to see everybody again. Welcome to the February 15th, 2024 meeting of the Ann Arbor Renters Commission. The purpose of this commission is to advise the city council and the city administrator in matters affecting renters in our city. Our commission is made up of voting members who are appointed by the mayor and approved by city council, two non-voting city council liaisons, two non-voting members representing different landlord perspectives, and a non-voting representative from University of Michigan Student Legal Services. To speak during any of the public comment opportunities, you'll be able to speak either through the webinar link or by phone, depending on your method of access to the meeting. For phone access, please call 877-853-5247 and enter meeting ID 935-8080-1941. Also, the instructions will be repeated during the public comment session. Great, so we can move on to roll call. As always, please state the city and township or state that you're calling from if it's not from Ann Arbor. So I am here calling from Ann Arbor. Commissioner Chen.
I'm Dan Chen. I'm here in Ann Arbor.
Welcome. Commissioner Kelly.
I am here in Ann Arbor as well.
Nice to see you. Commissioner Droppelman.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Welcome. Commissioner Else.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Howdy. Commissioner Lowe's.
Here, Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Tibbetts.
I'm here also in Ann Arbor.
Great. Commissioner Rosen.
I'm here in Ann Arbor.
Nice to see you. Commissioner Ratcliffe. Commissioner Thomas. Commissioner Pitts, absent. Commissioner Good.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Nice to see you. Councilmember Redina.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Hello. Councilmember Harrison.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Howdy. Okay, so we have a lot of people here, which is great. We do have quorum. So we can move on to item 3, approval of our agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as it's presented today?
I'll motion.
Okay, moved by Patrick. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, I heard Jeff. Oh, go ahead, Travis. Okay.
Sorry. I was waiting for you to open it up for discussion, but I apologize. I can't stay for the entire meeting tonight. And so I know that it's not currently broken out, but if you wanted, I have the bit of a report of the ordinance that's coming on Monday. And so if you wanted me to give that, if we could move that up in the agenda, maybe to after the first public comment, I'm happy to do that.
Okay, sounds good. Do we have a motion to do that? Make that change?
I'll motion to do that.
Okay, amendment motion.
Make the change to the agenda.
Thank you, Patrick. Do you have a second?
Second.
Second by Jamie. Okay. Any discussion on that? I don't think so. Okay. All those in favor of making the amendment to the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Okay, so the proposed agenda is so amended. So now we move on to voting. Well, I guess we didn't exactly. Did you say which part of the agenda you wanted it to be moved up to?
I figured just after the first public comment was fine. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So now we can vote on the amended agenda. So all those in favor of adopting the agenda as amended, say aye.
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 All those opposed, say nay. Okay, we have approved our agenda. Great, so now we can move on to item 4, approval of last meeting's minutes. Now let's see, this is approval not only of the January minutes, but of the December minutes. Great, so do we have a motion to approve these meetings minutes?
So moved.
Thank you, Jeff. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Dandan. All those in favor of approving our minutes, say aye.
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 All those opposed, say nay. Okay, with that, we approve our minutes. Now we move on to our first general public comment. That's item 5, and I'll pass it off to Kristen.
All right. Public comment can be made by phone by calling 877-853-5247 or 888-788-0099 and entering meeting ID 935-8080-1941. If you are calling in, you can press *9 to raise your hand to be called on to speak. If you are attending through the web link, you can use the raise hand feature. You can address the Renters Commission for up to 3 minutes. If anyone is interested in addressing the Renters Commission, go ahead and raise your hand. And the Zoom link is a2gov.org/Renters Commission meeting. I'll wait just another minute. Okay, no attendees have indicated.
Thank you, Kristen. Okay. So now we can move on to Councilmember Medina's report.
Thank you. And sorry again that I have to leave a little bit early. I have a conflict tonight. But I just wanted to give everyone an update on the ordinance work that you guys were working on. And I know Commissioner Rosen has been working with our attorneys on drafting as well. And I think we have landed on a final version that was submitted today by Councilmember Harrison and myself. And I believe Council members Briggs, Watson, and Cornell have already signed on as co-sponsors. And this is the first ordinance that we were working on to clarify and update our early leasing ordinance and right to renew. And so there are a few changes that were added to it. For the biggest, I guess, thing that happened is we merged the two sections into one. If you'll remember, this is hopefully helping to clarify the way that the ordinance is both being read and understood, but also enforced, because previously they were kind of like confusingly referring to timeframes in other sections and all over the place. It was a little difficult to follow. So it is technically a repeal of section 8531, but ultimately that section is being absorbed into section 8530, and so the content remains there, but it's kind of merged together and brought into a more cohesive law. The second piece that's happening is we're really hoping to strengthen some of the language and clarify some of the language in a way that would close up some of those loopholes. In conversations today, we seem a little bit more confident that the language will strengthen the city's position in being able to cite some of these like early bird specials and things like that ultimately some of the landlords were using to try to get around the ordinance. And so feel very strongly that this helps strengthen the city's position in terms of enforcement to be able to actually help protect some of the renters, where before, I think, after a year plus here now, we'd identified some areas that needed to be strengthened. And then there were also another change you will see, which I think will hopefully help to cut down on confusion among some of the tenants who are trying to figure out if they actually did have a violation. Previously you'll remember there was a lot of reference to counting days backwards from the end of a lease. That was really kind of difficult and confusing to follow, particularly when the dates and the amount of days didn't align. And so this version actually changes that, so everything is counting forward. It's 210 days into a lease, and so it's still the same amount of time, but it's moving it forward, and the way that they made sure to address that for those leases that may be longer, because when we were first drafting this, there was concern that what if a lease goes to 13 months to avoid that, or what if somebody has a 3-year lease or a 2-year lease, and so there is clarifying language in there that for leases that are longer than 12 months, that date begins with kind of the last 12 months of a lease. So all of the timeframes are predicated on that last year of a lease. And so this is hopefully going to create a lot more clarity around this. I feel pretty confident from conversations I've had with staff that the city feels this strengthens their position in being able to enforce the ordinance, and crack down a little bit on some of this bad behavior. And so this will show up for first reading on Monday. And then 2 weeks from now, assuming that there aren't any considerable changes that happen in between, there would be a public hearing and a vote on second reading to pass it. And assuming it passes, it would then the new version would go into effect 10 days later. And I see Gail is raising her hand, and I'm thrilled with that because I was actually going to ask her if there's anything else she wanted to add, because I know she's been working on it.
Well, I haven't seen the final draft, so I wonder if the final copy can be shared with everybody.
Yes, it is. It is published on Legistar now, and so I can make sure
Okay.
that I share that with Kristen to share around.
Okay. Yes. No, I mean, I'm hoping there were some things that I was still uncertain about when I was talking to John Reiser, but so I'll be curious to see what the final draft looks like, and hope that it fixes some of the changes. One of the questions I had, though, that I asked John, but I don't think I heard back from. So this doesn't change the effective date of the ordinance, does it? Like, we're not starting over again.
Correct. I mean, the
Okay.
existing, yeah, that is correct.
Okay.
The changes will just go into effect 10 days later. It
Okay.
amends the existing ordinance. Yeah.
Thanks, Travis.
Jordan.
Obviously we'll see it hopefully yet tonight even maybe, but the big thing with the like emailing time frame, was that able to be addressed at all, like that they can't solicit them so early on? So that was something that was really important to our small work group.
So we believe that this language, this is where I'm talking a little bit about the strengthening of the ability to enforce, is I think there was the way that the language was written previously referred to, there are different legal terms, I guess, around an offer. And the previous version left a little bit of wiggle room around what constituted an offer. We believe that moving forward, any solicitation for renewal, it is a renewal offer. And so that is where this early bird special piece is.
Awesome. That was what I was specifically going to ask.
And so, if you're emailing and saying like, sign up now and you'll save $500, you're providing an offer. And so they believe that they've clarified the language in a way that strengthens that. And yes, I will send that over to Kristen right now so that she can get it out to folks, but it's on the city council agenda for Monday, so that's where it's publicly posted. And sorry, since I am giving it up. Oh, do you have another question about that, Zachariah? So all right, so since I am giving an update, the only other thing that I'll give an update on, and I don't know if Cynthia wants to chime in at all on this either. I don't want to just pretend I'm the only the council member that could give an update here. We also received, we had a work session on Monday, and council has recently received a report on economic development opportunities in the city. And a big part of that is around housing supply. And so it may be of interest to folks who, particularly on this body, who are interested in additional housing supply in the city, but also how that correlates to rent and possibly the addition of additional renters, but hopefully also additional supply, helping to ease some of the burdens on price around the city. And so the report calls for additional housing at all rates. So market rate, affordable, workforce, all of those things. And so making sure that all of those different types of housing are prioritized moving forward. And so just wanted to add that work session happened, and there's a lengthy report, but for those of you who don't want to read the lengthy report like those of us on council needed to do, the work session might be a nice kind of abridged version. It was about I think about a 2-hour work session. I think that's all I've got.
Thank you. And I actually do have a question in your first part of the report. Sorry about that. If 8530 is amended and you said that it would take effect 10 days after, or shortly after its passage, how is there a plan for how we would communicate these changes to landlords, and what happens in the event that they've already made communications that would violate the new version of the law?
Yeah, so I unfortunately, I mean the new version is not law currently, and so it wouldn't be in effect until 10 days after, and that's just kind of the rules around posting and new ordinances taking effect, but then yeah, the city generally then will it falls on the kind of the administrator and staff to inform of the changes, and of course we'll need to make updates to our website, things like that. I am confident that, I mean, in reading the language myself, I am confident that it is much clearer, and so hopefully it's a lot easier for folks to understand when they're reading through, and so it might even be something that we want to update on our website, things like that, to make sure we're getting the word out. But particularly, I think I will share it with, I know some folks who are in some of these, student and parent Facebook groups and things like that, where this is a hot topic, and even just using our personal networks to make sure that folks are aware that the change has been made. Because I think ultimately, once that goes into effect, if folks continue to see this happening, that's where we hope that they'll file, especially if it happens again, even if it's happened to them before and they didn't feel like there was enforcement before. If it happens after the new ordinance, hopefully there might be new recourse for them to be able to enforce against that circumstance. But unfortunately, yeah, until it goes into effect, the current ordinance is still what we're going by.
Thank you.
Of course.
Any other questions? Oh, go ahead, Julia.
I was just, maybe we need to put it on the agenda for our next meeting to, once it passes, to see if we need to change the booklet to make sure the language we have in there about ELO matches with the current version.
I don't think it will, so.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll certainly have to do some updating, because obviously even the reference to the second section, that's kind of being absorbed into. So I think the current early leasing ordinance is absorbing the right to renew ordinance, so it will all kind of become one, and so even the number will change on some of it. So yeah, we'll have to update all of our materials.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Thank you very much again for that report.
Of course. Thanks, everybody, and I'll stay as long as I can here, and I apologize again, I have to leave early.
Thank you. We can move now on to item 6, old business. We don't actually have any old business, so we can continue on the agenda to item 7. Let's start with 7-A, discussion of attendance and appointments. So let me pull up something here. Let's see, how many do we currently have any vacancies on the commission? Go ahead, Julia.
Yeah, Lucy's position's been posted for a little while, and I don't know if we've got any interest.
We also still have that attorney vacancy as well.
That's right. Okay, that's what you're gonna say, Travis. Yeah. So I have contacted a few attorneys about this. Unfortunately, I tried to get some attorneys from legal services of South Central Michigan, but apparently part of their bylaws prohibits them from sitting on boards like this. However, there has to be more attorneys in town and around the area, so I think we need to all double our efforts. Gail, if you know anybody, that would be a great help. Travis?
I will put her on the spot and throw this out here, but there's also the possibility that if Gail would want to move into a position where she could be a voting member, she could apply for that seat, and U of M could appoint a different representative. But that's just another idea that we could toss out. I have not discussed that with Gail, as I'm putting you on the spot here in the meeting.
Yeah, no, I'd consider that. I mean, I'm not sure who they pull in from U of M, but there's obviously plenty of people. So either one would be fine with me. But you just want another attorney regardless, right? Yeah, I'll ask around and see if I know anybody.
Thank you, Gail.
I believe we also have a member who's not attended for a number of months.
Yeah. And I know I think we reached out to him before. I feel that we should move forward with removing him from the commission, and maybe one day he'll have more time and be able to participate again. But we need to have more people, more active members right now in the commission. So what's the process for that, Kristen? I know this has happened before. For removing a member of the commission who hasn't attended.
Typically people resign. I'll double check with what the procedure is. I know that we can report to the mayor, and then I think the mayor has a part of the decision in choosing whether or not to remove the person. So I will share this information from this meeting with the Boards and Commissions coordinator in the mayor's office.
Okay, thank you, Kristen. And has anyone from the commission asked him to resign? Okay, we should probably do that first and maybe give like a week or two, and then if we don't hear back, then we'll go forward with the removal through the mayor route. Okay. Jeff?
I just double checked the bylaws while we were talking, and that is what it says, that it's 3 regularly scheduled meetings. Shall notify the mayor and we can recommend removal. That's all it really says.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Yeah, we have hit that point. Okay. And then so we would have 2 vacancies at that point. There's also my seat, which will be vacant in a couple months. So we need to all try to get people to apply. I know I've been asking my friends, acquaintances, to consider applying. And I think that in the past, when we've had to appoint people, usually we've had the chair, the vice chair, and our city council liaisons meet and go through the applications and make recommendations to the mayor. We've also invited other people to participate in that process in the commission, but in the past, it's usually just been the chair, the vice chair, and the 2 council members. So I think that our path forward is to contact the commissioner who hasn't attended, see if he can, if he's going to resign. If we don't hear back, then we'll have him removed. And then council members Regina and Harrison, do you want to meet as a group sometime soon in the next couple weeks?
Yeah, sure. We can.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we can certainly find time and take a look at the applications too and see what's come in. And maybe look back at some of the older ones too and see if there are folks that if we're interested and want to see if they're still interested.
Definitely.
Do we have like a flyer or something? I mean, can we make something that's like more attractive to share widely, maybe? Would that be advantageous?
I think it is prominently featured on the website. Sorry, I didn't raise my hand.
Oh, no.
But I don't know if there's like a graphic or anything like that was made last time.
Yeah, I can't remember. Either way, I'm more than happy to make something. Jordan, I know you made some things in the past that look great. So maybe we can include you on the email thread. There, okay. Great. As a to-do, I'll make sure I send out an email to all of us to schedule that meeting. And welcome, Luzanita. Nice to see you.
Oh, sorry I'm late.
No worries. I don't know if it's necessary, but where are you calling from? To take attendance?
Oh, I'm calling in from Ann Arbor, Michigan. Sorry about that.
Great, thanks, Luzanita. Okay, I'll open it back up. Is there anything else to talk about in regards to this topic? Okay. Great. Well, in that case, we can move down to 7-B, which is to discuss planning future commissioner education opportunities. I'll just say that we did schedule Avalon Housing, which is a nonprofit developer in town, for our next meeting. So they're gonna come and present a little bit about what they do. They are a very prominent entity in town, so it's really important that we learn about them for those of us who don't know a ton. Any other opportunities for commissioner education? Julia?
So I'm not sure if I thought the like security deposit went really well. Thank you, Gail. But I don't know if there's other parts of the law, if people have a particular interest, like going over evictions or repairs or something like that we could do. I don't know if anyone from the Housing Commission has come and spoken to us before. That might be something also.
Jordan?
I will say that when I was on there's a small work group that's working with WHA and some other housing providers like SOS and Ozone House. I've been going to for about 5 months now. And any landlords that are interested, Bob, if you want to interested or any other landlords that are interested, it's been a good working group. But we were talking about some survey results from last year from a WHA survey of landlords. And there was a lot of landlord interest in education series, education video for tenants about like how to be a good tenant. And so I'm wondering if, I know we have kind of thrown that around in the past. So we thought that was maybe something I'd just kind of bring back to the group. If there's any interest in kind of working on that, I guess either as a commission or if you personally are interested in maybe working on something just about, not real heavy maintenance or anything, just kind of basic communication things, basic leasing things. If you're at all interested in that, or if the commission is interested in that, let me know, I guess.
Thanks, Jordan. Gail?
It might be nice to have someone from Hawk Housing Access for Washington County to come and talk and let us know sort of their process and what resources are available for renters who need them.
That's a good point.
Putting that out there.
Yeah, I think Hawk would be a good guest. That's the Housing Association of Washington County. Housing Access for Washington County. So, it's Shelter Association.
Yeah, it's Housing Access for Washington County.
Okay, because there's also the Shelter Association of Washington County, I think. SOC.
Yeah. So for folks who don't know, housing access is going to be the like #1 main call that you call to start getting help, either with you have an eviction that's coming up, you are on the edge of eviction, you are unhoused. All of those people are going to funnel through that. And for the call this past month, I was kind of surprised by the numbers, so I'll just say them quickly. That the report was that there were 3,100 calls to Hawk in January alone. So that seemed like a pretty big number. And comparatively was kind of, they go up and down, but it was interesting for me to hear that. So I think the commission might benefit from that too.
Yeah, that is a staggering high number. Okay, so far we have Hawk. Remind me of the other ones that were mentioned.
Washington Housing Alliance, I think.
WHA, thank you. Was there another organization?
Ann Arbor's Housing Commission.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you. Great. On top of that, WHA actually has a training, housing advocates training, excuse me, hat. That's this month. I will send out the information to every member of the commission. I think it'd be a really good idea if all of us can, as many of us can attend as possible. I believe it's online. Jeff?
I'll have more details when I report on the HHSAB meeting, but the last meeting had a visit from the Planning Commission with a lot of really good information about just in general economics in the area, current situations in terms of taxes and of course housing and plans and things like that. So their website, but also possibly having their director come out and kind of maybe do the same presentation for us could be very informative. I got a lot of really good information.
Thanks, Jeff. And that would probably directly address one of the points on our work plan, which is to learn more about the TC1 zoning effort, the transit corridor effort, among many other things. Okay. Great. Oh, and Rosanita, I know we had recently talked about inviting the Unbuds person from which California city? It was
Oh, it was Santa Barbara County. They've had a landlord-tenant ombudsman program since the 1970s that it has like a 90-some% success rate of resolving the issues between the landlords and tenants, so they don't actually have to go to court or get evicted.
Yeah, that'd be great. And we may even want to invite some people from other organizations to that because they probably haven't heard directly from officials from Santa Barbara County on that. Okay, so I'm looking at Washington Housing Alliance, Hawk, Housing Commission, Planning Commission, and the Santa Barbara Ombudsperson. Of these 5 options, are there any that you all prefer to explore or to prioritize, not for our March, but for the months after?
I'm guessing it's going to mostly depend on their schedules and when they can send somebody.
Okay. Yeah, well, I can send some emails here and try to get something scheduled for future meetings. I'll just send them out and plan in advance and present to all of you which ones could be which dates. Great. Anything else on this topic? I know, Julia, I just want to echo what you said earlier about whether or not there's any particular areas of tenant landlord law that we all want to learn about. So before we move on, is there any particular topic outside of security deposits that you all want to learn more about? I would say evictions, but I think it's probably gonna be covered in the WHA training. So I think that we should all prioritize going to that if possible. Okay. Anything else on this topic before we move on? Great, thank you,
I think
everybody.
there was, I was just looking at the work plan again, there was the topic of slowing gentrification, but I'm not sure who would be the ideal person. I might have to do some research to find out what policies have been used elsewhere, or maybe if there's researchers in the area that would be able to come speak to that topic. That's something I could follow up on.
So good point. All right, well, we can move on now to 7-C. Discuss the complaint form outreach. That's, I believe, for 530 and 531, which the city's going to consider amending soon. I'm going to pull up the complaint form, but I'll also just open this up here. Does anyone have any thoughts about how to do this outreach? Julian?
I'm kind of curious. It sounded like there was one ticket issued. And if there's been any others, I've heard from a couple people who filled out the complaint form that the response they got was just that the city was going to talk to the landlord and tell them to stop doing it.
I think it's a question for John Reiser, who's unfortunately not here right now. Well, what I know is it's basically what you said. There was at least one ticket issued. I don't think the court date has come yet. I think it was postponed. But from what I know, the city is only issuing the one ticket like per landlord, basically. So the idea is that they don't want to issue too many tickets because the landlord will have a chance to correct the behavior in the future. Is my understanding. Jamie?
Yeah, just wondering if you or maybe Gail could speak to like what does that process look like? You mentioned like a court hearing got delayed. Like does the landlord have a chance to like dispute the ticket, or I guess I'm wondering like where the court hearing fits in with that process.
Very good question.
Yeah, the only thing, my understanding is that the court date on the ticket was postponed to or adjourned to allow the landlord to take some, corrective action. And it's up to the city at that point, I believe, to decide what to do from there. So again, that's another good question for John Reiser. I don't know how they're intending to proceed. I understand that the corrective action that was suggested has been taken by the landlord, and I don't know where that leaves the city at this point. So if I hear anything else, I can let you guys know, or if next time if John Reiser's here, he can update us as well.
Jeff?
Kind of along the same vein. The court date was that because it was being challenged, do we know, or because it was more like let's see where we are, let's see what we can fix and possibly assess a fine or not, or was it a challenge, or was it just part of the process?
I mean, they could always give an adjournment. My understanding was it was done to give the landlord an opportunity to try to come up with some suggestive correction, something to do to try to fix the problem. It's a little late, but nonetheless, that was done, and so it's within the city's discretion to postpone things, to give them, and to try to sort of negotiate some sort of resolution with them. So I don't know, can't speak for the city. I don't know what they'll do moving forward.
So, oh, go ahead, Jordan.
I actually want us to go back. There's some changes in I'm texting with Travis right now, but there's actually I'd like to go back to the ordinance amendment. I think the timeline is actually off in a way that we didn't think, and I just want to talk about that. So whenever it's appropriate to come back to that would be great.
Okay. Let's discuss that after outreach with the complaint, I think. That does sound important. Okay, so I think we have to ask where we're kind of in a tricky situation, I'd say, because we're trying to get the word out about a law that's about to change. So any education we do now might not only be unnecessary, but might actually confuse people once the law does change. Just kind of some of my thoughts here. Gail.
I think people are pretty well confused as it is. And at this point, I mean, I can't tell you the number of students that are coming in our door, or calling us or reaching out. I mean, I assume I no longer follow the parent Facebook page, but Jordan, I'm sure you're seeing plenty of comments about this. So I mean, I would push for postponing any sort of outreach until or education piece until we know what's going to happen with the proposed amendments and where that leaves us. I mean, at this point, at least for most of the students that have their leases that end in August, they're sort of done with that process. I mean, it's sort of done, sort of ongoing, that the landlords are dealing with the renewals. So I think we should wait rather than confuse the situation anymore. Just my 2 cents.
Jordan.
I think that's fine. I mean, by the time this gets through, has the second reading and is effective intended, like we have some built-in time, right? Before education efforts about all of the things. So, I mean, I think that's fine. Yeah, I get what you're saying, Gail. Like we're, within the next month, all of the late summer leases start getting signed. And so that makes sense to me.
Jamie?
Yeah, I would just say I agree with that, especially since the new change, if it's made, won't be retroactive. I think that could be really confusing for people who would think that maybe the new change could apply to their current situation, not like what's going forward. So I think that makes a lot of sense.
Okay, great. I think if we know people who are dealing with a situation, it's a clear violation, and I'm still going to encourage them to file a complaint, but I generally agree. Is there anyone who isn't sure about that approach or who disagrees with holding off on outreach? Okay. Jeff.
I was going to just add, I think that's exactly what needs to happen, especially with being able to provide people with a more concrete date in terms of training as to when, these kinds of things take effect, but also to continue to encourage, because I mean, even though the law may be changing, there is still an ordinance on the books. It obviously has been enforced. So, as you said, just continue to encourage people if they feel like there's a violation to move within the existing framework until it really is replaced, because it does exist. And at least in one case, it's apparently doing its job.
Thanks, Jeff. Okay, I think now would be a good time for us to discuss your concern, Jordan. I'll just give you the floor.
Yeah, sorry. I should have looked at this when Travis was on. Essentially what they've done is that the landlord can't make the offer until it was previously due to be signed, basically, essentially. So now it's putting, like, unless I'm not mathing right, feel free to double check me. 210 and then 240. So 240 from the start of the current lease is basically going to mean that we can't sign for, like, we couldn't start even showing it to new people for a late August lease until late April. And, like, honestly, students have already gone home. So we've actually bumped the timeline back in a way that makes it not workable for landlords, I think. I would prefer to see us do, I think, if we're going to get, I like the 30 days to accept. That's what we've been doing on our own with our students. I think that it would really, that it makes the most sense to say the contact can't go out until 180 days, and that the successive renewal would have to be accepted by not 240 but 210. Because I'm really worried about that timeline. If we can't even start showing units, people are already out of town in April. And so we didn't really talk about that as part of our work group. That makes it very unworkable for me as landlord. I don't know about Bob or Gail's thought on that, but I mean, we are already getting hundreds of emails a day by this point, and we hold people off, but continuing to do it when students can't even go look at apartments because they're already out of town was something we had talked about heavily with the first iteration.
Yeah, I understand your concerns there. Julia?
So I kind of like the timing better, but I'm not a landlord. And another way to get around it is September 1st is like the worst time for a new lease to start. Like, I don't get it. And I think that's a way to get around it. You could start August 1st, or you could go to May 15th, or you could go.
I hear you. And let me explain, I guess, our perspective on that. So we do our group leases on May leases. That's pretty rare, but we find that groups kind of want to be around for the summer. The other students that are grad students and things, their programs often don't start. So our smaller units that are more geared toward grad students all start mid to late August. I don't think many people actually start a lease on September 1 anymore because mostly the school semester starts before then. So I hear what you're saying, and that, yes, we can start them earlier, but when the summer session of classes goes until, like, have to check the date, first or second week of August, people need to be living there. So, I mean, the timing just is tricky, and it's thoughtful in our process in a way that I hear what you're saying, that we could just start signing them for earlier, but that doesn't eliminate the problem of people need to live in them. Either, like, having a half summer lease doesn't really work, because either someone isn't here and they want to sublease for the summer, or they are here and they're doing classes and they're working and they want to be here for the summer. So August 1 is, or say July 30, July 15 isn't really a timeline that works for students. It either eliminates the possibility of subleasing all summer if they don't renew, which screws them out of like 4 months of rent that they could be getting. Do you get what I'm saying with the kind of, with so many of our renters being students? I don't think that forcing landlords to make a change that basically eliminates the possibility of summer subleasing for students is healthy for them, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
can-
you know, I guess back in the day, it used to be May, so you you know, it makes sense to have the break around semesters.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you, Jordan. Cynthia?
I just wanted to say that there was some discussion around 180 days. And we can look at amending it to 180, and then would be the 210 with the additional 30-day period.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think that kind of accounts for both scenarios. It gives them the 30 days. And honestly, the other part too is for May leases, even Julia, that an extra 30 days would start us leasing like essentially over the holidays or at the beginning of the semester, which kind of is tricky too. So I think for both timelines for May and fall, I would appreciate that being looked at. So thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I understand your concern, Jordan, and I also share it. I think that students need to have some time at least, a decent amount of time to be able to tour, if that's what they want to do. And a lot of people do leave during the summer. And yeah, so I think that the dates probably should be reconsidered. And I think probably some more outreach needs to be done to student tenants, since this is predominantly a problem that affects student tenants, not only. Yeah.
I wonder if it would make sense for our smallish group on this to try to meet now that we have the updated version, to try to meet again and go over and just see if there's any other things that we have any concern. I mean, if we could meet with it before the city council meeting.
Yeah, I second that. I think that's a good idea. I can send out an email.
Okay. I'm just seeing, because I had sent some suggestions and I'm just seeing now what changes are made and what weren't. So I've got to look compared to what my notes were from before as well.
Yeah, I think we should take a look at the like very commonly used start dates for leases, and just with a date calculator, figure out, okay, here's where we'd land. Is that reasonable? And then, ask Jordan, ask Bob.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we could do something Friday, tomorrow or Monday, that would be great.
Okay. I'll send out an email now. Thanks, man. Any other discussion on the proposed amendment? Great. So, Jeff.
Sorry, I do have a quick question, and there might not be a quick answer, but kind of tied into that. Do we have any kind of ideas to the percentage of the city's leases are student? I mean, I know we can use age and some basic demographics there, but just in general, how many of our what percentage is in fact student leases that would likely fall into that August, April kind of time frame?
I'm unaware of any hard data on that. Yeah.
As best as I could figure out, taking the amount of U of M students and dividing stuff out, how many were in dorms, that kind of thing. The number I came up with was slightly less than half of the renters are students. But what landlords do for students spills out into the rest of the community. I mean, every lease I've had is a September 1st lease, and the landlord was never willing, and I don't live somewhere where any undergrad would ever live. they're just not willing to consider any other date. Though it's a lousy date for me to move because there's so many students going crazy in town. I'd rather move any other week. But nobody's been willing to budge on it.
Thanks, Julia. That's about what I was figuring too in my head. Okay. Anything else on 7-C before we move on? Okay. Thank you everyone for the discussions. I'm looking forward to meeting as a group to discuss these amendments. Okay, we can move down to item 8, reports. Are there any commissioners who would like to give a report? If so, just raise your hand. Jeff?
Yes, I have a report as the HHSAB liaison from their last meeting, which was just last Thursday, actually. As I'd kind of mentioned before, 1 second, I have to pull my notes up here. In this particular one, there were the two largest kind of topics of the meeting were a kind of a review of the city's comprehensive plan that the Planning Commission is putting together. And it covered huge amounts of information. I don't want to go through the whole thing, but I have like 2 pages of notes that I took because it really was quite fascinating in terms of how much of the city is residential, how much is commercial, how much is single family dwellings, how much is still available for development, just the densities, all sorts of different pieces of information, which is possibly pertinent to what we do, and that's why I brought it up earlier too. Just kind of as a some of the highlights, the comprehensive plan is being worked on currently, and the idea is for the final plan to be rolled out towards the end of this year with an adoption for early 2025. That's kind of the time frame they're working on. And they have a website, which I'd be happy to share with everybody that goes through a lot of this information. One of the more interesting things that I saw was that of the jobs in the city, there's approximately 94,000 jobs. A lot of 76,000 of those commute into the city, which I think is, and only 17,000 live here. So I think that kind of touches on what we do, and the fact that obviously housing in Ann Arbor is a big concern. And in terms of the jobs themselves, 37% are tied to U of M. Ann Arbor apparently is like the most dependent area in the country on a single anchor employer. So I found that very interesting too. The other big topic of discussion was the affordable housing that the city does manage. My understanding is there's only 33 units currently, mostly in the single person studio kind of style. Very few, if any, family units. So there's kind of a chunk of the population that might be needing those services that might not have access simply because they're just not available. And they mostly occur in 3 different locations. There is some look at expansion and possibly even creating some family units. But that was the other big topic of conversation for that one. So that's kind of the gist of it. Like I said, I will share out the link to the comprehensive plan website that has a lot of that information there too.
Oh, Jeff, do they recommend to do the service too? Because they have the website, seems like they wanted people to do a lot of surveys, whoever lives in Ann Arbor or who has ever visited Ann Arbor, they wanted to do the service as many people as possible. Maybe we could share this website to everybody here, and everybody here could help us to do the service too, if possible.
Yeah, on the website, the very first thing that pops up is links to take our survey. So they really are looking for information in terms of their plan. The TC1 was brought up as well, and I know we talked about that today. So it's a pretty, there's a lot of information out there, and so probably easy to get lost in it for hours, doom scrolling through all of it. So like I said, I'll send the link out if anybody wants to take a look.
Thank you, Jeff. Jordan?
Can we use our mailing list to email out the survey? Is that or like, is everyone on our mailing list already getting the survey? I don't think is everybody
There's a
on
website. There's a
renter-
website. Yeah, the website. Yeah, if you
Right.
need it, we could share this website. I do have the website, and
Yeah,
we-
I'm wondering if we can use our renters commission mailing list to do outreach for the survey. Kristen may have that answer. Thanks, Standen. I appreciate it.
Definitely. With the renters commission subscriptions, other departments don't have access to it the same way. So people wouldn't have received it unless they already subscribed to planning updates.
So Jeff, you mentioned, did you say that? I think I didn't fully understand that there are only 33 affordable units that are managed by the city of Ann Arbor.
That's the number I overheard. There weren't many, it sounded like, and they're looking to expand. And these are ones that are administered through the city's the fund and Commission Councilwoman Harrison. Please tell me if I'm wrong. The city's fund, and like just recently in the news there was that article about the development that made the donation to the fund rather than do affordable housing. So that was my understanding, was that particular directly managed by the city, not necessarily subsidized in other developments, kind of thing.
Yes, that sounds about right. Correct. Yes.
Thank you. Bob?
Yeah, I'm just curious, does that include the agencies like Avalon or anybody, any of those organizations who are providing housing? 33 seems awful low.
Yeah, that's what caught my attention too, and why I wrote it down. And like I said, I believe that is specifically administered by the city versus other organizations that provide services like that.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah. Jordan, do you still have a question?
Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna say, I mean, to my knowledge, the Housing Commission manages 18 separate properties. So I don't know. Maybe it's a nuance of funding, but I mean, there are, I don't know. Yes, the 33 sounds very weird. I don't think that's correct, but that they have 18 properties under the Housing Commission, at least according to last meeting that I went to.
I will do some more digging and figure out where my number has gone wrong.
Thank you.
Just as a kind of a follow-up, the three properties that they mentioned were Ann Arbor City Club, Beekman on Broadway, and the Standard, which is the newest one. And they mentioned how Beekman on Broadway has a third phase coming. Those were the three kind of properties that actually came up in that discussion.
Thanks, Jeff. Rosanita?
Well, even though like there may be say 18 properties, I know that like in the neighborhood where I grew up, there's like it's one property but three buildings, but there aren't that many units in there. It's one of the few Ann Arbor properties from like the 70s or 80s that was meant for families. So it may be like 6 units at most, but it's 3 buildings, so and there's like I think 1 or 2 more that the city owns that are left in the area where it's just very few units within multi-level buildings.
Thanks, Rosanita. Cynthia?
It's Yes, that's correct. And it's 19 buildings built, well, not buildings, 19 locations and 506. Within those 19 locations, there's 506 units. But that does not include like what Rosanita is talking about. So that may constitute the 33, like all the other just separate, few units here, a few units there.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think that's more of a number, more in the range of what I was imagining, more around 500%. But you go ahead, Jeff.
I just pulled up the waitlist website too, and I'll include that when I send out for the comprehensive plan site to so you all can see what I'm seeing from them too.
Okay.
But it is the only ones listed on the waitlist site are those 3 properties that I mentioned too. So
Okay.
I'm sure there's other resources, and maybe they are through the city. In fact, I'm sure there are. But like I said, those were the 3 that kind of popped up.
Gotcha. I think this highlights the need to have a guest from the Housing Commission, perhaps, so they can answer some of these questions. Okay, well, thank you, Jeff, for the report. Any other questions for Jeff before I move on? Okay, any other reports from commissioners? So I have reports, which is just that if you're interested in getting involved with housing advocacy on the state level, aimed at our towards our state legislature, please let me know. There's a coalition called the Rent is Too Damn High Coalition. I know they're looking for people to help out. And as far as I understand, they're focused currently on advocating for more investment in public housing, social housing specifically, actually, mixed income social housing. It's an exciting project, so if anyone's ever interested, please let me know. Beyond that, I saw that the Ann Arbor Tenants Union's social media is now active, and I know that they've been meeting. So if you're interested in joining that, I understand there's going to be some public meeting soon. So you can go probably follow them on social media. It'd be a good way to follow what's going on. Okay, we can move on to report. Councilmember Harrison, do you have a report to give beyond what Councilmember Travis, Councilmember Regina said?
No further report beyond that, what we discussed earlier.
Thank you very much. Okay. Wonderful. We can move on to item 9, second general public comment.
Public comment can be made by phone by calling 877-853-5247 or 888-788-0099 and entering meeting ID 935-8080-1941. Once you call in, you can press *9 to raise your hand. You can also join using the Zoom link, which is a2gov.org/renters commission meeting. And if you're joining with the Zoom link, you can use the raise hand feature. If there are any attendees who would like to address the Renters Commission, go ahead and raise your hand. Here we do have one so far.
Hello. I'd like to echo some of the comments that have been made about the change from the 150-day from the end date to, correct me if I'm wrong, is it now 210 from the start date? Okay, so this whole year, people have been telling students, student renters that, 150 days from the lease end date is this date. So let's just, for example, say this date is March 15th. A lot of, as Jordan has pointed out, a lot of renters have reached out and have repeatedly been told that date. With this proposed change of moving it 210 days from the lease start date, that for the company I work for will change that date. So I think it's a little unfair to have been telling student renters this entire year, don't worry, wait until March 15th. We're going to be able to help you on March 15th. Just wait until March 15th. And now, midway through this cycle, we're going to have to tell them, just kidding. The city council has just extended the date and, further pushing off all of these extremely eager incoming renters and transferring renters that just want to be able to secure housing. I think that would be a total disservice to those people just doing this in the middle of the year. Just my thoughts.
Thank you. If there are any other attendees who would like to address the Renters Commission, go ahead and raise your hand. All right, no other hands are raised.
Thank you, Kristen. And I'll make sure that we add that as a discussion topic for that work group meeting on ELO right time, right? Because I do think it's obviously a valid concern. Okay, we can move on to item 10, communication. So let's okay, so I see, Kristen, you removed 2 of the communications. So then there's only 1 on there. Was that on purpose?
Tell me which one had the error, and I'll put the other
It
one.
was number 3 regarding prior, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, that was that one. The other two are fine. We can begin with the first one, which was an email from Jewish Family Services. I've heard nothing but good things about JFS. And I'm really excited that they reached out. Are there any comments or questions about this email?
Might be nice to have him come as a speaker.
Good point. I'll add that to the list. Anyone else? Okay. I suppose Julia and I, we should talk about who would set up a meeting to discuss with them. Make sense, Julia? Great. Okay. We can move on to the second email thread that was forwarded to us. This is regarding the toilet issue and the heating issue. Anyone have any thoughts about this email thread that was forwarded to us? So my understanding here is there was an issue with the toilet and the heating, and then the city inspectors got involved. Do you know how this ended up? I got being a little lost in anything else. Any thoughts about this one?
It seems to be an ongoing complaint that the tenant has filed with the city rental housing department. So I'm not sure what role we would play in this at this point.
I noticed I think the most recent date was the 5th. Is there any update or way of knowing if this has been closed out beyond what we see here?
You can check with rental housing. And I can report back.
Or probably a good idea just to check. Seems like they have a handle on it, of course. That is their job. But always good to be aware of what kind of complaints are being submitted. I appreciate that that you're gonna do that, Kristen. Okay, any other discussion or questions on that email? Red? Okay. I think we're skipping the third one for now because of the redaction issue, but maybe we could have that on our next agenda. Redacted properly. Okay. So let's move on to item 11, adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
All motion.
Moved by Patrick. Do we have a second?
A second.
Second by Rosanita. Thank you. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Great. So with that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good night.
Take care.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.